Kite runner analysis. The main character, Amir, lives in Afghanistan with his father Baba and his servant and servant son Ali and Hassan. Amir and Hassan break social stereotypes in the society and are very close friends. Amir yearns for his father's attention, so when Amir and Hassan enter a kite flying contest, he hopes that this will get his attention. Hassan goes running after the losing kite and unfortunately gets raped by the neighborhood bully Asif when he doesn't give up the kite he got for Amir. Amir knows that this occurred but remains hidden, which later haunts him for the rest of his life and forever changes his relationship with Hassan. Hassan's presence constantly reminds Amir of his guilt, which eventually forces Ali and Hassan out of Kabul. Later on, a Russian invasion forces Baba and Amir through a difficult journey to emigrate America. Once adjusted to American life, Amir meets Soraya, who he eventually asks Baba, as a last favor due to his cancer that is killing him, to ask for Soraya's hand in marriage. Baba dies shortly after they marry, and Amir and Soraya remain childless for many years. Many years down the line, Rahim Khan, an old friend, calls inviting Amir back to Pakistan, where he learns that him, Hassan, and Hassan's family had been living in Amir's old house. He also learns that the Talibs had come to the house and executed Hassan and his wife, leaving their son Sohrab an orphan. Amir goes on a quest to find Sohrab in a hope to satisfy his guilt he has had since Hassan's rape, and eventually comes across Asif, who also wants Sohrab. They fight and Amir becomes badly injured, but still takes Sohrab and tries to take him back to America to live with his wife and him. This process becomes very challenging and eventually leads Sohrab to try to commit suicide. His attempt is unsuccessful but alters his relationship with his new family in America greatly. After a few years, the family goes to a kite flying contest, and Sohrab finally takes steps out of his silent shell while Amir reminisces over his past kite flying with Hassan. These are my literary devices. The quote is, "I remember one day we were planting tulips when I asked Baba if he'd ever consider getting new servants. Hassan's not going anywhere, he'd barked. He's staying right here with us where he belongs. This is his home, and we are his family." This is an example of foreshadowing. This was used to show Baba's true feelings towards Hassan and to hint at a reason for them. Later on, Amir will realize the reason for Baba's anger is because Hassan is actually his stepbrother, because Baba had slept with Ali's wife. This also foreshadows Amir trying and failing to get Hassan kicked out of the house by staging that Hassan had stolen something of Amir's. Amir thought that this would get him kicked out for sure due to Baba's belief that theft is the ultimate sin. The quote for this literary device is, "I helped him into a clean white shirt and knotted his tie for him, noting the 2 inches of empty space between the collar button and Baba's neck. I thought of all the empty spaces Baba would leave behind after he was gone." This metaphor is comparing the empty space between his shirt and his neck to the figurative empty space that will be left when Baba dies. The reader can see how much Baba means to Amir and how much their relationship has changed throughout the years. Without this metaphor, the emotions of Amir would not have been conveyed in this moment. This also reveals how much of an impact Baba had on others by the multiple spaces Amir talks about. The next quote is, "Hassan held the slingshot pointed directly at Asif's face. His hand trembled with the strain of the pulled elastic band, and beads of sweat had erupted on his brow. 'Please leave us alone, Aga,' Hassan said." The slingshot is an example of a symbol in the story. It is a symbol of the loyalty Hassan has to Amir. Hassan is willing to physically harm Asif to protect his best friend Amir. This later becomes ironic due to Amir putting in zero effort to protect Hassan when he was about to be raped, unlike what Hassan was doing in this moment. Hassan shows this sign of aggression that he had not shown prior to this moment, which proves just how loyal to Amir he is and how far he will go for him. The last quote is, "I am a baby in that photograph, and Baba is holding me, looking tired and grim. I'm in his arms, but it's Rahim Khan's pinky my fingers are curled around." This is an example of imagery. The detailed description of Amir shows how young he was and the fact that even as a baby, him and his father did not have the best father-son relationship. The fact that Amir was in his father's arms but was still holding someone else's finger shows the disconnect between the two characters. This point is further exemplified through the book as Amir yearns more and more for his father's full attention. Text to self example. I think that I mostly can relate to Amir, while I don't like to admit, which I don't really think that anyone does, but I can be selfish at times, just like Amir can. Now, I am not to the extent of letting my best friend get raped, like Amir did with Hassan, but in small things I can be selfish in wanting myself to get a good grade, or wanting something to be more convenient for myself. Text to text. In A Good Man is Hard to Find, Red Sam says, "These days, you don't know who to trust." This reminded me of Hassan and Amir. While Amir didn't kill Hassan like the misfit did with the grandma, he did metaphorically kill their friendship when he didn't protect Hassan and when he was being raped. This loss of trust between the two of them ruined their friendship due to the fact that Hassan would have protected Amir in this moment. This further proves Hassan's loyalty to Amir. Text to world. My example is racism in America. I don't have a specific example, but the general idea. Some people in America think that they are superior because of their race, so they treat other races poorly. This is similar to how Asef treats Hassan. Because Hassan is a Hazara, Asef thinks that he can treat him as if he is less than himself. Most Pashtuns at the time also thought that they were superior, which at the time was a common issue in America between blacks and whites. So, just like the Pashtuns and the Hazaras, we had the blacks and whites at the time. So the Pashtuns were treating the Hazaras poorly, while the whites were also treating the blacks poorly. Just like this is still an issue, just not as prevalent in America, just as it's still an issue in Afghanistan, just not as prevalent as America, but not as bad as it was then. The setting. The majority of the story takes place in Kabul, which is in Afghanistan, but also takes place in America. These locations served as a home for the main character, but not necessarily a safe place, as you would normally think a home would be. Afghanistan was a place of happiness and also jealousy of his childhood best friend Hassan. Hassan also becomes the cause of a lot of guilt for Amir due to Hassan's extreme loyalty to Amir, even though Amir does not show the same back due to his own fears and the social norm of Hassan, being a Hazara, to be treated as less than. America serves as a quote-unquote new beginning for Amir, even though that's supposed to be eventually has to go back. Towards the end of the book, Amir calls his previous home, Afghanistan, a place of fear for him due to all of his guilt from his past. Afghanistan was originally a monarchy, but was overthrown by the Taliban, which is why Baba and Amir were forced out of Kabul. This caused the people of Kabul to be in a panic, and those who could tried to flee to other countries. My favorite quotes, and this page got a little messed up somehow. The text is really close together, but it looks better now that it's full screen. In the end, the world always wins. That's just the way of things. Page 99. I like this quote because of what it made Amir realize. This quote by Rahim Khan made him notice how little control him and everyone else has over what happens to them in his life. Even though he didn't want Hassan to be raped, he couldn't control that. Now, while he could have done something to prevent him from actually being raped, he couldn't control the fact that Hassan was put in that situation. It always hurts more to have and lose than not to have it in the first place. I like this quote because of how true it actually is. Most people will be more upset if they lose something because of their attachment to it, but if they never had it to begin with, they would have never had that attachment. Just like people who have never had anything can never relate to someone who had it and lost it, just because they never had the connection to that object or person or anything. It may be unfair, but what happens in a few days, sometimes even a single day, can change the course of a whole lifetime, Amir. I like this quote because of how much it actually related to the story, while also applying to many other things outside of the story. Unlike the two quotes up above, whenever I read that, I can think of many other things besides the book, but whenever I think of this quote, I specifically think of this story. Amir's experience with Hassan forever changed him as a person, but also affected most aspects of his life. So it not only affected him and Hassan's relationship, the guilt carried on with him throughout the rest of his life, where he was constantly seeking redemption. Unique discoveries. The culture in this story actually makes Hassan's rape normal. The reader views this as a very sad event, but at the time this was completely normal between Pashtuns and Hazaras, just because of the social class difference between the two. The author of this book, Khalid Hosseini, was born in Kabul, which is the location of the majority of the book. So unlike other authors, he is physically and emotionally familiar with the setting of this book, meaning that he can relate to some of the things in the book, and he really knows what he's talking about instead of some authors just going off of what the internet tells them. This story was inspired by news that the Taliban had banned kite flying. I thought that this was very interesting just because of the fact that kite flying, if you think of a kite, you think of something free, and the Taliban very much was the opposite of everyone being free. The American section of the book is written for Americans, and it makes America the picture-perfect place for Amir's new beginning. Because whenever people think of anyone from anywhere coming to America, you think of them fleeing something bad and wanting to come here because we are a place of opportunity. Final analysis. Overall, I really enjoyed the novel as a whole. I did really like the roller coaster the book was, from the excited or not so exciting moments to what I think of as filler story, which was calmer to read. If the novel had a sequel, I would definitely read it. While I did like this book, it's not my favorite that I have ever read, just because of the fact that I found some parts boring and it was hard to stay interested to continue reading. But after continuing reading, I just realized that you had to kind of get through what some people would call fluff, and then you get back to the more interesting topics of the book. And for future students, I would recommend listening to the audiobook on YouTube. Lit crits, The Kite Runner from a Marxist perspective. My first idea for a Q3 would be that Hassan is actually okay with being less than Amir. This could be used to show a person's self-knowledge. Hassan was aware that he was less than Amir, but he did not try and act higher. He was a kite runner for Amir, but he never really wanted to fly the kite. He never tried to be of that status. And then also the idea of jealousy. Amir constantly shows how jealous he is of Hassan, and this could all show how jealousy does nothing but bad things for him, because no good actually comes to him when he tries to make himself better than Hassan. Actually, some bad things come to him instead of that, so exactly the opposite. How to Fly a Kite for Dummies, Action versus Consequence. Amir gives up Hassan for his own benefit, which in this case was him not getting beat up. This decision haunts Amir throughout the rest of the story, his life. Well, the rest of the story, which is his life, and he never fully gets redemption. And I'm running out of time. The second one is quest equals self-knowledge. The thought of Amir's quest back to Kabul makes me think about what he gained when he went there. He thought that getting Sohrab would make up for what he had did to Hassan, but he also got redemption by getting beat up by Asef. Also the idea of did he really get redemption, but the general idea of how his quest made him realize things. Guilt as a driving force of humanity. Guilt ruins relationships. If Baba had been honest that Hassan was his son, his relationship with Amir would not have been so poor, because Amir wouldn't have been so jealous and confused whenever Baba gave attention to him. Guilt drives people to overcompensate for their mistakes, which isn't always a good thing. But on the other side of that is guilt drives achievement. Without the guilt, Baba would not have donated so much of his money to better others' lives, and this shows how guilt can drive someone to do good in the world. That's all.